Hey, what's up? It's Jacob. Welcome to the first build video on the new YouTube channel. Today we're going to be building this knife. It's the knife that Chris Pratt carries in Jurassic World. This is a prototype that I made a few months ago, but today we're going to be making the real thing. There are a few different changes that we're going to make to this prototype to get a little bit closer to the one you see on screen, but we'll talk about those as we get to them. Let's go get started. To start off, I've got the blade drawn out on a sheet of paper and I'm cutting it out. Later on we'll be able to glue it to the actual steel and use it as a reference, but right now we're just getting a very rough shape cut out for this blade. I don't have a blank that's a appropriate size for this, so we're doing it out of the leftovers from the laser cutter. I clean up the burr on the Scotch-Brite belt. Now that I've got clean steel, I went ahead and glued the template onto the steel. Get a little closer with the angle grinder. It's really a wonderful tool, the angle grinder. You can do a lot with it, and you can also screw stuff up really bad with it, but this was a success. One of the things that's going to be different about this knife than the prototype is I'm going to be doing mosaic pins. I've never made mosaic pins before, but I've got some tube stock and I've got some little pin stock, so we're going to try it. I'm going to try to make 8 inches worth, which should be enough for 2 knives. Unfortunately with this, all 3 of the pins are mosaic pins. A lot of people do designs that only have like 1, but this one has all 3. The design I'm going for is very simple. It's the same as what's in the movie actually. It's just 4 pins in a tube. Unfortunately, my goal was just to do this with materials I had on hand, and that was 9/32 tube stock and 1/8 inch pin stock, which I don't know if I've got any math geniuses watching right now, but 4 1/8 inch pins will not fit into 9/32 tube stock. So here I am, very slowly, very painfully making my 1/8 inch less than an 1/8 inch. So close. Like it's in, but I gotta keep going. I ended up ditching the 4 pins idea, and I'm just gonna go with 3 because any more grinding and I may have gone insane. And I don't know how much. Like I said, I don't know how much of this I need.
You can calculate.
We could, but it shouldn't be that much because a very good portion of the actual space is taken up by the pins, you know? This step right here should have been my first indication that I had done something wrong, because when I've seen people do this before, their epoxy is a lot thinner than this. As I just said, it's very thick, and it doesn't look good. Usually when you see people do this, it's thin, it's drippy. It just kind of goes in there and it fills all those voids. At the time, I was very worried about there being lots of bubbles and voids once I cut into the pin. And it turned out that I was very right to be worried. The pins were still pretty tight. I didn't size them down all evenly, I guess. So I did use the hammer a little bit to get them in there. It's like one of them isn't quite all the way down in there. Oh, it's like there's some twisting, maybe. Well, nothing I can do about it now. These are pretty even. Perfect. While I let that epoxy set up on those pins, it's time to go ahead and start working on the blade. Here I am profiling it out on the 2x72 with just a 36 grit belt. I'm just trying to get to the edges of the paper right now, nothing crazy. This is actually my 3rd time making a knife with this pattern. The first was that prototype that you guys saw. The second one was a custom order that my boss got. And now this 3rd one is hopefully going to be the peak evolution of the knife. Here it is all profiled out. They say don't throw knives, but this isn't sharp yet. I'm going to go ahead and use a center punch to punch where my holes are going to be. That paper didn't stay white for very long. Go ahead and drill out the holes. This is relatively easy because at this point the steel is still annealed. Gotta do it now though, because if you wait until after heat treat, it'll be next to impossible. Now that we've got those holes drilled nice and even, I'm gonna go ahead and put a bigger drill bit in and just go ahead and deburr the holes. They get nasty little gunk on the edges when you drill, so it's nice to just clean them up like this. Now it's time to go ahead and roughen the bevels. I like to grind roughly 80% of the way to the final thickness before I do the heat treat. That way you don't have as much material to take off afterwards, but you don't run quite so much of a risk of crazy warps. Now the last thing we've got to do is the file work on the spine. The original blade in the movie has some pretty cool kind of vine looking file work, and I honestly have not done very much file work at this point in my career, but I'm pretty happy with how this turned out. Now it's time to heat treat. We'll go ahead and turn on the forge, give it a few minutes to heat up, and then we can go ahead and heat up the blade to hot stamp the logo of my boss's brand into it. I'm putting it in the forge spine down for this because I'm going to be stamping it. When I actually go to quench, I'll hold it with the edge up. I don't know how much it actually matters. I think it's pretty evenly heated in there. Get it nice and hot, put it on the anvil, and then give it a good whack. Episode brought to you by Bricks. Now we're heating it up to quench. We want orange on the edge, red on the spine. If the scale flakes off on the edge, then you know you've got it hot enough. And into the oil, and there it is. We got that scale popping off. Just what we wanted. I'm gonna go ahead and put it under this brick while it cools, just so I can stop any warping kind of preemptively. And then once it's cooled down a little bit, we're gonna go ahead and clamp it to this nice flat piece of metal and throw it in the temper. It's a pretty good feeling when your quench goes well. I'm sure some of you guys probably watch Forge and Fire, and you know that that's when a lot of problems happen. You can get crazy warps, you can get cracks. None of that happened on this build, so I'm grateful for that. Forge and Fire is so interesting because anytime I ever do like a craft show and people see that I do knives, without fail, I get double digits of people asking me, "Oh, have you been on Forge and Fire? Oh, I like Forge and Fire. Oh, my son loves Forge and Fire. Oh, you should go on Forge and Fire." And it annoys me to no end. But I agree, I would love to go on Forge and Fire.
What? And what is your normal oven for?
This has a timer, so I can turn it on and we can leave it. Well, that didn't work.
That one kind of has a timer.
Throw it on there. It's day 2, working on the Jurassic World knife. We've got the blade in the oven, finishing up on the temper. We're gonna check out this mosaic pin, see how we did. The epoxy didn't quite come all the way to the bottom, but we're gonna cut into it, and if we need to fill some gaps, we can. So let's go ahead and do that. So at the beginning, I honestly did not realize how bad these pins ended up being. When I cut into them at first, it was hard to tell, but then I sanded them down a little bit, and it's pretty bad. We are gonna deal with that later. I'm not just gonna leave it be. But for now, we're gonna work on the blade. There we go, it's out of the temper. The temper's very important because right out of the quench, if it's too hard, it'll chip if you try to do anything crazy to it. The temper just softens it up a little bit, gives a little more toughness. I'm gonna go ahead and unclamp it once it cools off. And we're gonna check it for straightness. Even though I clamped it up, it's still possible to to get a little bit of warp, which I did. Just a tiny bit, though. Nothing that's not able to be dealt with. And it was mostly in the handle, which wasn't hard anyway, so I could 3-prong jig it without worrying about it cracking. Now it's time to start on the final grind. Using a 120 grit belt here, getting those bevels in, getting them shiny, thinning it down, because like I said, I only grind about 80% of the way there before the quench. But it's looking pretty good, so we're going to start on the handle. This handle is going to be curly maple. We have a lot of curly maple in the shop, but a lot of it is kind of questionable quality. So I actually went through and picked a board that I could tell looked pretty curly. I'm going to go ahead and cut down to a block that I can use for my handle. And just look at how gorgeous that wood is. Come on, that's got some great tight curl. I picked a good piece. Now we can go ahead and start shaping the wood. Go ahead and trace it, rough it in on the bandsaw. I don't have to be very precise here because we're going to clean it all up on the grinder. Go ahead and drill my holes. There's some big holes because this pin stock is a weird size. And then we can rip it. The reason I drill my holes before I turn it into scales is so that I know my holes are going to line up. If I do scales first and then drill my holes, there's always the chance that something doesn't line up perfectly. Then I go ahead and flatten them out, and I have to shape the top before we glue it to the blade. Because if I don't shape it now, I'm not going to be able to get in there once the blade's on there. The little pseudo guard presents a challenge, but we get it done. Now with the top of the handle all shaped and the blade all ground, it's time to go ahead and glue it up. I put a line of glue on both sides and I spread it around a little bit with one of my pins. Mostly you just have to worry about the top, because if glue squeezes out the top, it can be hard to get off without scratching the blade up. But I get my glue spread out, I get my pins in there. They're tight, but they're not hard to get in necessarily. I do a little bit of light hammering and that gets them in there. And then we can go ahead and clamp it up. The secret with clamping, you don't want to clamp too hard, because if you clamp too hard, you just squeeze all the glue out. So you have to clamp it, but not clamp it, you know what I mean? Alright, it's been a couple hours. I'm gonna unclamp this, go ahead and square up the handle, and then we'll see what kind of attention these pins need, because there are still some voids. It's looking good, I'm feeling good, it's starting to feel like a knife. Go ahead and square it up on the belts, just real rough with a 36, and then I round over the edges, and then I go back to the belts at a higher grit. Go ahead and clean up some of those lines, and then the handle is basically shaped. Now it's time to give that attention to the pins. Here I am scraping out some of the dust. I'm gonna fill these in with epoxy, but if they're all dusty inside, then the epoxy won't stick. And if this looks stupid and tedious, it's because it is. But I don't know how it could have been avoided. All right, so I picked out the voids that had dust in them, and I'm gonna try to fill it in with epoxy. I have no idea how well this is gonna work. If it doesn't work, I've got one more idea, but let's just hope this works. Basically, the takeaway is next time use thinner epoxy. You can see my brother in the background there. I had him working on his own little knife while we were doing this. But basically what I'm doing here is I mixed up some more epoxy and I'm trying to fill in those voids. It looks disgusting on the outside right now, but I'm going to sand it all down so you won't see any of that stuff on the surface. Here I am the next morning. It's all hardened up. Time to sand it down, finish shaping. I'm working on the belts here just to get the majority of the excess material off. Here you can see, honestly, the fill job did pretty good. It's not perfect, but after a little bit more sanding, a coat of stain, some Danish oil, there you go. It's a good looking knife, honestly, if you ask me.